Israeli intelligence officer says Pearl Harbor-style attack will be pretext for war with Iran. Jerusalem Post article implies U.S. will stage provocation to justify military assault. Former Israeli intelligence officer Avi Perry writes that a surprise Pearl Harbor-style Iranian attack on American warship in the Persian Gulf will provide the pretext for the U.S. to launch all-out warfare against Iran. Continuing with that situation, here is the report out of the Jerusalem Post. The looming war with Iran. You mean the buildings getting blown up, military bases being blown up, missile bases being blown up, scientists being assassinated? It's already going on, and Iran is saying they're going to respond back against Israeli targets. And if they can prove the U.S. is involved, that the U.S. will be targeted, and then we're off the races, and the TSA has a good excuse, I guess, to stick their hands down your pants and set up checkpoints in America. Putin says he's confident Israel will push U.S. into Iran attack. That was quite an announcement that came out in major Russian newspapers today, like Interfax, but got almost no attention here in the United States. It goes on to say, talk about Iran creating an atomic bomb by next week. We have heard for many years, he said, instead of making sure Iran does not develop a nuclear weapon, the United States is attempting to overthrow Iran's leadership using all available means to make the country into a loyal partner. And that is certainly what's going on. Not that I'm saying Putin's some type of saint, but that certainly is the truth of what's going on here. Let's continue now, shifting gears out of the World War III news to Xbox 360. Workers reportedly threaten mass suicide. Another one of the big Foxconn laboratories there in China. And I want to go ahead and read over some of this article here. Xbox 360 workers reportedly threaten mass suicide. A dissident website is reporting 300 employees at a plant in China that makes the Xbox 360 threatened earlier this month to commit mass suicide for being denied promised compensation. The report, an anti-government website, China Jasmine Revolution, via We Want China Times, claims that the protest took place January 2nd at Foxconn plant in China. A tragedy was avoided after the town's mayor got involved and talked the workers off of their threat off the roof. But now the suicide nets have been put back up. This has happened at several Foxconn facilities, including one that makes the iPhone. And if Americans would just pay few dollars more for their iPhones, I've seen the different numbers, these people could have a living wage. But see, everything has to be driven down to the lowest common denominator because this is economic warfare, not just against the Chinese citizens, but against American citizens having our industrial base destroyed. No one can compete with this slave labor. And there's just been massive suicides all across China related to the working 18 hours a day, not being able to sit down, just being absolute robots, breathing all these toxic fumes, just amazing. So we're going to continue to monitor that. Microsoft has rushed in and I guess offered them a few extra pennies so they could actually feed their kids so they won't commit suicide. Here's another report on it. 1 million workers, 90 million iPhones, 17 suicides. Who's to blame? Now, I noticed our media does cover this, and they should cover this. But why not cover the fact that we have 7 times the rate of suicides and returning U.S. military forces than we've ever seen before? There's always a high rate of suicides, but these are off the charts. It's gotten some attention, but very, very little. We need to ask ourselves, why is this happening? Well, they're serving many, many tours, more than they should. They're exposed to deadly DU, given toxic vaccinations, and can't live on what they're paid. And a lot of them morally think that what they've done in the wars is wrong. Continuing here, loan shark firm targets students, 4,000% interest offered as alternative to student loans. And you're seeing more and more of this. I mean, just a few decades ago, loan sharking in England and the U.S. was illegal. But it's illegal if Vinny down the street does it. But as long as big banks and groups are doing it, well, it's A-OK. Some credit cards in the U.S. annually have 70+% interest. And the big mega banks get your taxpayer money at 0% interest and then loan it out. If that isn't loan sharking, I don't know what is. But the world government's run basically by Ponzi scheme, money-changing loan sharks. So what do you expect? Shifting gears into Congressman Ron Paul, away from our little friends, the loan sharks. South Carolina, Ron Paul surges past Santorum into top tier. In most states, he's in first or second place. But in South Carolina, he'd been lower than that. He's now risen. Ron Paul has surged past Rick Santorum into the top tier in South Carolina, getting a staggering 11 percentage points in the last week alone, declined to third with a total of 20%, with Mitt Romney's first place position at 29% looking increasingly vulnerable. The parrot, dinosaur, corporate whore, prostitute, media whore, Decepticon media has basically gone into cardiac arrest and is just going after Ron Paul at every level, and the public trying to mind control you, saying you cannot defeat the globalist, resistance is futile, Ron Paul cannot win. But he's swimming like a salmon upstream against this, and just continue to support Ron Paul, because we're causing a revolution of awakening and issues here. Whether he wins, loses, or draws, we all win for liberty, and Ron Paul is our champion. So support him financially, pray for him, and spread the word and get involved in your state, because Ron Paul is a gateway into liberty, and he is a modern Thomas Jefferson. All right, let's go ahead now, moving away from Ron Paul to the wars that he has been decrying. United States Marine Corps investigates desecration video, Afghanistan. Hamid Karzai calls footage simply inhuman. And, of course, there's the footage of the Marines urinating on some dead people that they reportedly killed, that are reportedly Taliban. And, of course, I've heard talk show hosts defending this. Do you understand this is going to cause the Muslims over there to get mad as a vendetta, because they take this type of insult very seriously, and that they will now target more U.S. troops right when they're trying to get a ceasefire going and a deal? But the neocons are all over radio laughing, saying it's great. We're bankrupt, folks. We're getting our butts kicked in Afghanistan. We're there so the government can ship $500 billion in opium out a year. It's not funny. You know how many U.S. troops are going to get killed because of this? But I'll say, peeing on dead bodies is nothing compared to shooting kids and then laughing about it, or killing people's dogs. But still, it's arrested development, and it's indefensible, and it's stupid. All right, I'm done talking about that. But it does make me think of that Apocalypse Now, where Colonel Kurtz is saying, you know, we censure our pilots for writing F-U-C-K on the side of their airplanes, but then we train them to drop napalm on children. So it's also much ado about nothing in the final equation, because it's a way that the defense secretary can look like he cares about people he's killing. We won't pee on you when you're dead. We'll just kill you for no reason, for your opium. Continuing, France's downgrade by S&P, losing AAA status report. It's now equal with the United States. Also, 5 European nations to be downgraded now, they're saying, after this initial report on France. Also, MF Global may not be able to pay back clients. Former customers of MF Global Holdings, collapsed brokerage, were disappointed to hear Thursday that trustees hunting for funds missing from their accounts has no immediate plans to transfer money to them. Well, it's well known it went to London and J.P. Morgan, and it just goes on to tell them that, hey, that's just the way it is, because Don Corzine says so. All right, that is it for the initial news on this Friday the 13th, 2012 edition. We do have a quote for you, though. Every night we have a Patriot quote, or we have a globalist sniveling New World Order quote for you here on the Nightly News. And here is that quote. From Abraham Lincoln, I see in the near future a crisis approaching that unnerves me and causes me to tremble for the safety of my country. Corporations have been enthroned, and an era of corruption in high places will follow. And he went on to describe how that would basically cause our country to collapse. And the money power, that's the Federal Reserve of the country, will endeavor to prolong its reign by working upon the prejudices of the people until the wealth is aggregated in a few hands and the republic is destroyed. And we certainly now are at that point. I feel at this moment more anxiety for the safety of my country than ever before, even in the midst of a war, Abraham Lincoln. And regardless of what side you're on in that war, the British were manipulating both sides. And Abraham Lincoln stepped right into the trap. But he did say no to the Rothschild loans at 30% interest and said, I'll issue my own Lincoln greenbacks. that he got killed for, and then Kennedy also reissued some of those greenbacks right before he was killed and issued an executive order to begin basically dismantling the private Federal Reserve. And one last little tidbit here after the quote. Judge denies lawsuit. Rick Perry, others remain off Virginia Republican primary ballot. It's only Ron Paul and Mitt Romney that meet the requirements. It's only Ron Paul who's a choice, but he's also a serious candidate actually on the ballot. All the others are spoilers to make sure that Ron Paul doesn't win. Sorry, traitors. We won when the first time we started fighting back, because resistance is victory.